When we are feeling strong emotions of anger, fear, anxiety, why is it so difficult to organize our thoughts, recall important things, and why do we end up saying and doing things that we regret later about? In this video, we'll learn about what exactly goes on in our brains when we are feeling these strong negative emotions and what we can do to improve our performance and become emotionally strong and balanced. There is a part in our brain called the prefrontal cortex. It is right here and it is responsible for decision making, logic, reasoning, creativity, learning, etc. It is also a place where positive states like enthusiasm, focus, and calmness arise from. This is basically responsible for our performance when we are at our best. There is another part in our brain called the amygdala, and this is responsible for negative emotions like anger, fear, anxiety, etc. So how the amygdala works is it perceives the external environment, and if it identifies something stressful, it hijacks the prefrontal cortex and the entire brain. So when this happens, we call it an amygdala hijack. During an amygdala hijack, the body starts pumping stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol, and we get into a response of fight, flight, or freeze. And during this time, it is extremely difficult to be creative and learn new things because our prefrontal cortex is being dominated by the amygdala. So this is a very unresourceful situation to be in. But this worked beautifully several thousand years ago because back then our ancestors faced a lot of dangers in their daily life. For example, let's say they encounter a wild animal in the forest, they had to respond quickly because there was no time, right? So the amygdala would hijack the entire brain and it would put them into a fight, flight, or a freeze response, helping them survive and thrive in that environment. Over the years, that is how the humans survived. But today, we don't have life-threatening situations happening in our daily life. But the amygdala still continues to hijack the brain even with minor stressors like a conversation that went badly or a phone call that was stressful or an email that triggers you. So these kind of stressors are enough to trigger us, and that puts us in a very problematic situation where we cannot organize our thoughts and think creatively, and we do not have access to our prefrontal cortex. Now that we've learned about what exactly happens in our brain when we are feeling these negative emotions, let's learn about what we can do during these phases to perform better and feel better so that we take control of the situation and be our best self. One very important thing that we have to follow is that when the amygdala hijacks the brain, it is easier to get out of the hijack the earlier we notice that we are in a hijack. So if you're starting to feel stressful, anxious, it's easier to get out of the hijack if you can notice that you're in a hijack early on in the process. The first technique to get out of an amygdala hijack is to give the power back to the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex, like we know, is responsible for logic and reasoning and creativity. So if we can activate this part of the brain, the power would shift from amygdala to the prefrontal cortex. So one technique is just think about the spelling of a really long word and then think about that spelling in reverse. This small activity can help you shift the power from the amygdala back to the prefrontal cortex. The second technique is practicing meditation. meditation would really help us overcome an amygdala hijack. And it would be even more effective if we practice meditation on a daily basis. The third technique is being more empathetic. Let's say you are triggered by something that someone had told you and you're feeling very bad about it. Try and understand what that person might be facing and what that person's problems might be, and what could be some hidden positive motives of that person which led him to say those things to you. This will give you a perspective of that person and make you feel better. Now that we've learned about what we can do to improve our performance during an amygdala hijack, let's learn about how we can become emotionally stronger and emotionally balanced. The good news is that the left prefrontal cortex in our brain has some areas which can stop and inhibit amygdala's actions and impulses. So the key is to strengthen this part of the brain. How do we do it? There are two techniques. The first technique is to indulge in more activities which relax you. The second technique, and I think this is a secret to emotional balance and emotional strength, it is practicing mindfulness. I intend to talk about mindfulness and other things in the future videos, but let me tell you that just by practicing mindfulness and doing more things that relax you can be game-changing in making you really emotionally balanced. I hope that this video added value to you. Please share this video with your friends, family and loved ones so that they also find value and are benefited by this information. Liking, sharing and subscribing can immensely help the channel grow. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'll see you soon.